Hi all, I just want to take a moment to talk through a concept to expand on something that I wrote on my blog this morning, which is about the collision of the things I write about to do with motivation and choosing goals that motivate you and building habits that keep those motivations going, and the stuff that I write out about that's a slightly more commercial basis about creating products that people want and will pay for and that are more likely to be commercially successful. And I was looking at a concept, which is a Japanese concept called Ikigai, which is roughly translated means reason for being. And it sums up the parts of this and how they overlap quite nicely. So I'm going to run through these here. And as I do it, I'm going to ask some of the more detailed questions that I use when I'm evaluating whether I should embark on a new project, usually a new course project. Is this something that I want to talk about and train people on for a number of years to come? Other side hustle type stuff. Are they fun? Do I want to do them? And am I going to stay motivated to do them for a long enough period for it to be commercially successful as well? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with what some people recommend, which is following your passion. Do you love it? Now, just loving something is not really enough. I mean, I love to sit around playing PlayStation or eating pizza, but nobody's going to pay me to do that. They might pay it if I was an exceptional Twitch broadcaster. They might pay me if I was so good at eating pizza that I could break Guinness records with it, but I'm not at those levels yet. And we'll see how that relates to a couple of other circles, actually, as we progress through this. So first thing is, though, you should pick something which you're going to enjoy doing enough that it will keep you going through, the months, possibly years, when you feel like you're tweeting at the wall, emailing into the abyss, talking and nobody's listening. That shouldn't really happen if we get some of these other points right, but sometimes it takes a while before you really hit the right note with your audience for them to get what you're talking about. So this is the first thing. Do you love what you're doing? And you should have a tick next to that. My kind of rule of thumb for this, if I'm about to start a new project, is could I see myself doing this every day for at least the next 2 years? And when I think about that, it usually helps if I look back and go, have I done this for a prolonged period in the past? So emailing, writing, I've done long stints where I've emailed every day, written blog posts, certainly multiple times a week, things like that. Sometimes I've fallen off the wagon. Sometimes I've got distracted by other stuff, but I always seem to come back to it. So I can look back and say, these fit a pattern of things that I've done before. When I took up rowing again after a 16-year layoff, I could look at that and go, actually, I spent nearly 20 years doing this 6 days a week. So I know that I can go out and train and enjoy training consistently. I've done it in the past. I can imagine myself doing it every day and enjoying that. Would I do it without being paid? Probably. If I could just teach people the things that I've learned over the how many years in business, then yeah, I enjoy doing that. So that's the first question. Do you love it? But it's not enough on its own. So let's move on one. Second one is, are you any good at it? So I brought up the example of, playing PlayStation and eating pizza. If I was world class at both of those things, if I was the best PlayStation player in the world, you can make a career out of that now. If I was the best person in the world at eating pizza, I could probably get sponsored by a pizza company. There are ways where you can do the most random things now and get paid for it if you're really good at it. Now, you don't actually have to be world class at something to make a living. You don't have to be the best in the world. And Scott Adams comes up with a a good story about this. Scott Adams is the guy that wrote the Dilbert comics, if you ever come across those. And he says, he's not the greatest cartoonist in the world. He's also not the funniest guy in the world, but he can draw reasonably well and be reasonably funny. And that puts him in the top few percent of humorous cartoonists. There aren't very many of them around. And because he's like top 10% in one and top 10% in the other, when you overlap them, he's up there in the top probably 1% of people who can do both of those skills. So even if you're not amazing at one skill, if you have a couple of things you can combine it together with, you can be really exceptional in that intersection. So how do you measure being good at something? I mean, that's quite tough. It's actually a relative term. You're good relative to the people who are following you. So if you were to score yourself out of 10 and you're only a 3, there are still 0s, 1s and 2s who can learn from the steps that you've taken. And actually, you might be more relatable than the 10s. If you're trying to teach somebody to take penalty kicks in football, they might look at someone like Ronaldo and say, it's just unattainable that I become as good as him, or Beckham. That would just become, it's impossible that I become as good as them. I'd give up before I'd put the years of practice in. But you could see some guy who plays for a local team who's like the best on his team, or maybe the best in that little league, and look at them and go, yeah, maybe in 3 months of concerted effort, I could actually get to the point where he is, and I'd at least be a big fish in a small pond. So are you good at something? Are you good enough to teach it to others is another aspect of that. Can you break down what you do in order to be able to teach it to other people? That's a big part of what I do, is breaking down the knowledge I've got so I can teach it to others. So that's our second criteria, and a few questions that might help you clarify that. So the next one is it needed? Now, just because something is needed doesn't mean that the market recognizes that it's needed. So let's take the perennial weight loss example. People know that they want to lose weight. They don't necessarily know or want to do the things that it takes to actually achieve that. But they will pay people to do, to get them the result they want, and they'll find all kinds of crazy shortcuts to do it. There may be other things in there that they don't know they need. So I took on a personal trainer a couple of years ago, and I wanted to lose a bit of weight. I'd got a bit soft around the middle. And after about 3 weeks of working with him, I lost a bit of weight. But what I discovered was there was a whole bunch of other benefits that I didn't know I had wrong with me before I started. The main one was my diet wasn't very good. I was eating very carby foods at lunchtime, and then having that post-lunchtime crash and almost nodding off at my desk every single day at about 3 o'clock. Now, once he straightened out my diet in the name of losing some weight, I gained a massive amount of energy in the afternoons. And I reckon I probably paid for that PT out of the increased production I got in the afternoon. So I didn't, when he asked me what I wanted to do and what was kind of wrong with my health, diet, whatever else, I never mentioned that. And I discovered it as time comes along. So sometimes you have to feed them that, the thing that they want in order to get to the thing that they need. And sometimes you have to just suck it up, sell them the shiny toy that they want in order to have the discussion about the thing that they actually really need to change in their lives. So that's our fourth one. Is it needed? You're really the best judge of that, but whether you can actually get them to do the things, to change the things that they need to change, or whether you need to take a step into that, you'll only know from your market. And it's connected to the last one, which is, will they pay? It's fairly easy to see if there is money in a market. Okay, you'll be able to see competition out there in the information products market, by which I lump together courses, ebooks, training workshops, all of those kind of educational type things, as well as reports and fact files and everything else that goes together with it. Will they pay? If there is no competition out there, I would be very worried. People that come to me and say they found a completely unique niche with nobody else in it, I really worry. It's possible to create a differentiator for your own business that you can say, I'm the only one doing it this way. But the market itself is the same market. You may have a unique way of attacking the weight loss problem, but the weight loss market is still the same bunch of people who want to lose weight. You're just attacking it with a different problem. So absolutely find markets where people are spending money. Look on Amazon, find products that have got large numbers of reviews, which means that they've been bought lots of times. Look on Udemy to find courses that are being sold. Look on eBay to find products that are being sold, all these kind of things. Look around and see where money is being spent. And if you can't see money being spent on something, then look at that as a red flag. So this can come up in some kind of hobbyist type markets where people will, they have a hobby, but they don't want to spend money on it. Some quite kind of cheapskate markets. But will they actually pay for it? So what you then need to think about is what happens when you drop one of these and what will happen. So let's imagine that we're not in love with our market. We have a market where you're good at it, it's needed, and people will pay for it. But that sounds to me very much like a rather soulless job. Those are the scenarios where you go to work each day, you might have found a talent in something, somebody will pay you for it, but you're just not fulfilled. So, a lot of people live their lives like that, but you have the opportunity to do things that you love and to get paid for them. So if you have that opportunity, I say you should take it. So let's take another one. Let's take the I'm good at it. So you love doing something, people need it, they'll pay, but you're not good at it. Now, this is a tough place to act. This means that you're acting from a point of being a real junior within the market, from a point of inexperience, and you're not delivering the value to the people in the market. Now, depending on your age, everybody starts somewhere. And like I said, if you are just if you're a 3 out of 10, then there are still people behind you, but you need to be realistic about who you can actually deliver value to if you are good at something. But you can work on that. And I think this, again, is a relative term. So you might not be very good at it, but you're always trying to progress to the point where you are. And actually, the better you get at something, sometimes the more inadequate you feel about it. There's a thing called the curse of the expert, where people who think they're, the more you discover about something, the more you discover that you don't know about that subject, and it can actually knock your confidence a bit. But I think actually this is one that you never really resolve. You can be good at it in the eyes of a novice, but you're constantly comparing yourself to the people who sit above you on the tree. But I think that life is really about trying to move along this axis here, trying to get better at something, trying to improve and master your craft so you become better and better and better at it. And that in itself is a very fulfilling way to spend your life. So take another one out. It's needed. Well, there are things that people will pay for even though they're not needed. Luxury goods is the first one that springs to mind. You don't need a Rolex. Most people don't even need a watch these days. They've got a clock on their phone. They've got it on their laptop. If I want to know the time, I just flick my eyes up here and I can see the time on my screen. But people want it. Now, that can be great if you just want to make money out of something. It can be a little bit unfulfilling. There can be times like now when luxuries kind of fall off the shelf in terms of fall off the list of things that people are willing to buy. It can be quite volatile. They can be quite, those markets can be quite fickle. And I think that the sense of fulfillment that you get from selling something which you know is not really needed in the world is far less from something where you know that people have got a real pain that you're solving there. Doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily do it if that motivates you, but think about the long-term fulfillment that you're going to get from those kind of products. And the last one is if you take out the ability to pay. Now, there are markets where the person where you're delivering the product to isn't the one paying. Anything to do with kids would be an obvious example where the parents are paying. Anything to do with charities where maybe, a government grant or some other donation is paying. But if you are trying to operate in the market where people do not want to spend money, then you're going to have a very tough time. And eventually you'll get to a point where you have to question whether you can actually carry on with this business. And I've seen some markets where there should be a lot of money in it, but some of those people will not open their wallets. I'm thinking particularly of legal marketing services, which I got involved in briefly, where the market is so conservative that very few people in it, not everybody, but certainly the majority of UK lawyers that I can think of, just do not spend money on marketing and think that a couple of £100 on SEO is a lot of money to be spending on marketing when actually there's competition out there spending tens of thousands on TV adverts for the same product. So it's not just that people are broke that means they won't pay. Sometimes it's just they're untrusting, they're overly conservative. And finding markets where, what we call hot markets, where people will spend a lot of money, particularly where they're passionate about it, is definitely an easier life. Anybody who's operated in markets like golf, where people will spend a fortune on, training, on, new clubs and gizmos to bring their score down by 1 or 2 strokes. A lot of my friends cycle and buy extraordinarily expensive bikes just to shave a few seconds off a time trial. Those kind of markets are a lot easier financially to stay in than ones where people are much more reluctant to pay. So I said right at the start of this that this is really the confluence of the things I talk about relative to motivation and productivity, and the more commercial aspects of the markets and validating your products that you should be in. So just want to draw this line across the middle, and so you can see where those two sit. So these two, I'm good at it and I love it, are all about you. If you miss these out, you're definitely going to feel unmotivated about your projects and about maintaining the habits that go with them. So that's where these two fit. Picking things that that fit your values, that you're motivated about, that you're prepared to work at and get better at, that you've already invested time on getting good at. That's where those sit on these side of the line. So this is all about you. The other side is the market. Whether the market has money and whether the market has needs and pain are really the only two things that matter in whether a market is worth going into. So if you're creating products, you need to make sure that it addresses these two things here. Is it needed, stroke wanted, and will they pay? And if you can get a project that ticks all 4 of these boxes, you should have infinitely less problems in maintaining your motivation, seeing success, and using that success as a feedback to keep pushing you forwards, keep you working hard at it, keep you getting better at it, and sticking at it in the long term. So I hope that you find that useful. I'm going to stick this on YouTube, so go and have a look for Stephen Prattley on YouTube. And if you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comments underneath, and I look forward to hearing from you there.